All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody, the Oracle.
Sure, let's go with it.
All right. And, okay, Cody, some big stuff happened today.
Well, it's been going on the last few days.
Yeah, so what's going on today? Share.
All right, well, this is it's definitely a weirder story. It's definitely more different for us. But Church of Scientology operated cruise ship has been quarantined in the Caribbean island of St. Lucia due to a measles case on board. It has now set sail for the island of Curacao after several days stuck in port. The ship left St. Lucia late on Thursday after local health officials sent 100 doses of vaccine to the ship, Reuters reported. Authorities refused to allow the nearly 300 staff and passengers to disembark. The ship named Freewinds has been stuck in port near the capital of Castries for several days. According to Reuters, Reuters Icon shipping data, thank you. The ship arrived in St. Lucia on Thursday. So it's a day ago. NBC News cited a St. Lucia Coast Guard sergeant who confirmed the ship was the 440-foot Freewinds. Online shipping tracker showed the Panama flag vessel has now left St. Lucia. It's on its way home to Curacao. Freewinds is expected to arrive in Curacao, an autonomous oil refining and tourist center belonging to the Netherlands at around 6 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. They did not immediately respond as to whether they'd be able to disembark. So, and there's a little bit more going on, but the gist of it is basically we have a ship of, I believe it was 300 cast and crew of all Scientologists rented a cruise ship, stuck on this cruise ship. And the real question is this: who is going to let 300 people from a Scientology cruise ship, maybe infected with measles, off on their island? Right now, they're hoping for number 2. They're hoping for Curacao, but very bizarre story. And again, what country wants 300 Scientologists that might have measles? Who wants them? Because right now they're in the ocean. If you want them, put them below in the comments. Tell them they're welcome. But right now, everyone's saying no, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know Scientologists aren't into psychiatric evaluations and medication. Are they anti-vaxxers as well?
Well, I don't know if they're anti-vax. I mean, I believe right here in the article that it goes on to state that
because how do all 300 get measles?
Well, I don't think they all have measles, but there's a 10 to 12 day incubation period before any symptoms appear. And one person on the ship, one female crew member, I believe, has been infected. But remember, this happened yesterday. So right now they're like, well, you guys, like maybe 80 of you, maybe 30 of you have measles. Like, we don't know. And they're just kind of drifting. I mean, they're currently on the way to Curacao, but there seems to be no simple way out of this for them, really. They're, like I said, we have Scientologists kind of floating around in the Caribbean looking for a home right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we don't know how many of them have measles, but they're out floating around in international waters, and they're not sure exactly who's going to let them off.
Well, but and get this. This is even more interesting. So the Church of Scientology describes the Freewind as a floating religious retreat ministering the most advanced level of spiritual counseling in the Scientology religion. But according to Ramona Diaz-Browning, a former senior executive on the Freewinds, her time aboard was like being an animal in a cage. In an op-ed for the ABC News, Browning said she was forced into an extensive re-indoctrination program after being caught trying to escape the ship. As part of her punishment, she was forced to do hard labor in the ship's engine room and eventually became suicidal. She would go on to say, I took to always carrying a pocket knife with me as the idea that I could take my life at any time was the only way I could feel some sense of empowerment. The only thing stopping me was the image of my mother's face and when she would hear the news of my death. She eventually left the church some 5 years later. And then on Thursday, actress and former Scientologist Leah Remini told Newsweek, the outbreak in St. Lucia may have been a blessing in disguise. If any of the ship's passengers managed to get off this ship of horrors, there's no indication that anyone left the vessel. So this is apparently a bit of a notorious ship in the Scientology community that is pushing former members to the brink of suicide with hard manual labor. And they are now, like I said, looking for a home. They're currently floating around out there in the ocean waiting for anyone to take them. We won't find out until early Saturday morning if Curacao, I believe they said a Dutch port, is going to let them stay.
Oh my gosh.
It is really a bizarre story. And I think one of the things about Scientology that's so interesting is the reason why we're always so fascinated. They guard everything they do so well. You very, very rarely get a peek behind the curtain of what goes on there. And it's just crazy to think of. It's like, what is a Scientology cruise like? You know what I mean? And then what happens on a Scientology cruise
and it's like,
when something goes wrong?
I don't know what to believe, though, because you're watching these documentaries. And I'm a huge religious freedom guy, and I can't stand what I see done to Christians in the media, how we've become wildly anti-religious as leftist secularism has destroyed a lot of the social fabric, okay? And part of that social fabric is religion. So I'm a huge fan of people having a faith. I'm a huge fan of there being diverse religions around town. And I'm a huge fan of people being religiously involved. But you can't look at the doctrine of separation where fathers aren't allowed to talk to their daughters and their sons, and mothers cannot speak with their husbands or their children if they lead the Church of Scientology. And to me, religion, I love the word religion because it comes from the actual Latin word religare, which means to reconnect, because Plato and a lot of the old Aristotelian and a lot of the old Roman philosophers literally believed that, like, before we came to this earth, we were connected to the gods. There was like this link, this connection. Your reconnection with God is your religion. So religion is godly, and the participation.
But get this. I want to tell me how godly this was. So this is another.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is Scientology.
Well, another woman also. I believe it was Inside Edition. I got this woman on the record. The Church of Scientology's vessel, Freewinds, same boat, is a beautiful ocean liner, but one woman says it's more like a slave ship. Former Scientologist Valeska Paris said she was ordered to join the ship's crew after her mother criticized the religion. I felt like a prisoner, Paris told Inside Edition. I was supposed to go for 2 weeks, and I ended up being there for over 11 years.
What?
She claimed the crew's comings and goings were closely monitored. There was armed guards at the gangway monitoring who left the ship and who came on. Now, just to be fair.
No, see, every religion has people that are just errant individuals who've gone a little bit crazy that will make the most outlandish claims against your church.
Again,
I've heard every outlandish claim against Catholicism and Mormonism.
Full disclosure, when reached for comment, a Scientology representative said that Miss Paris is a liar who peddled false stories to the media.
Dude, look what they say about Leah Remini now. She's got video of this crap.
As evidenced by numerous photos. I mean, well, dude, what are they supposed to say? Oh, yeah, she's right. But it's miserable. You don't want to go there. Like, yeah, I mean, that's just all they can say is she's a liar. But it is very interesting. Like I said, they kind of, whenever this stuff happens and we kind of get the curtain pulled back on I had no idea there was a Scientology cruise where a bunch of them got on a boat and toured. I had no idea that existed. So,
and here's the crazy thing too, is you hear these wild stories, and there's so many of them that you're starting to think, okay, these can't all be fake. These all can't be exaggerations. You can't watch Going Clear. You can't watch Leah Remini in Scientology and the Aftermath. And you can't read all of the books written by the people who have survived Scientology, okay, and not start realizing that, wow, some of this stuff is true. But
dude, one of my uncles, I believe he's on a missionary now, but earlier in his life, he's very impressionable. And he fell into the Scientology church in like the 80s or 90s, a while ago.
Okay.
And my grandfather actually had to pick him up where they had him at one of their facilities and they couldn't leave. So he had to break himself out. And this is much less sophisticated era of Scientology. But apparently he came running out of some building holding his phaeton meter sensor and threw it in the back of my grandpa's car. And they had to get out of there. So but I do believe, I do understand. And I like what you brought up, though, because I think these people are kind of wacky. The idea of holding someone prisoner for 11 years on a ship is obviously very wrong. But yeah, when it comes to religious freedom, like at what points do the rights of Scientology end? Also the argument, and I don't know, we don't have time for this argument, but this one always interests me. People say, well, Scientology is not a real religion. And it's like, okay, well, I can understand why someone who believes in a different religion would say Scientology isn't real. But
okay,
when you're arguing to someone who might be in the complete center here, who's like, I don't practice any religion, what makes Scientology less valid? And people can say, well, this, that, and that. But the bottom line is, where is that line draw? Where your religion is no longer valid. Your beliefs are no longer, you are no longer allowed to believe in those things and be considered a believer. At what point is that line drawn? It's very interesting. I mean, I have to admit, holding people, like I said, hold people as slaves on 11 years on cruise ships doesn't sound like a great religion to me, but where do we as a society say you're no longer can be called yourself
religion?
Well,
what blows my mind is their ability to continue. I lived for a year in Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, right now next to the Big Blue building, and there was the Sea Org out 24/7. And the other thing that blows my mind is I am hearing ad nauseum on the Salem radio network now. When I'm working and I'm commuting to and from work, you're getting all of these Scientology network TV channel commercials now on the most... I think they were formed by Christians as like a Christian radio network, and now they do like political talk radio and whatnot. But legitimately, you're getting all these Scientology network ads now that are extremely well funded all over the place. And I kind of wonder, like, what? I don't know if I could, as a radio host on the Salem Radio Network, just start pimping. I can pimp all kinds of products. Like, here's this painkiller. It's freaking great. Oh, yeah, these tires are the best for your vehicle. Better gas mileage. I mean, I can sell almost anything on a radio if you force me to write a spot, but I would not at all feel comfortable pimping Scientology.
I don't. Well, also, and most of the time, not always, but a lot of the times, that'd be set up like the live reads. I don't think they're gonna pay for live reads for that reason alone. I don't think people are gonna want to read a spot. Like, you know what, run it in the break. But again, though, where's the question? At what point are you allowed to say, I refuse to allow this religious group to advertise with me because I disagree with religion that much? At what point is that okay? Because a lot of times we would argue it's not okay. You can't. Look, you can't just tell people because you don't disagree with their religious beliefs, they're not allowed to be present in a certain area or function or advert. You can't just say, sorry, your kind's not welcome here. Yeah. I thought that was kind of the country we're building. So and I don't know what the answer is, but it's curious. Where do we get to say, okay, look, you've crossed the line. The proverbial line has been crossed. Where is that line?
I don't know, holding people hostage, because then it's no longer
Allegedly.
Yeah, but if she can prove it, that's some pretty damning evidence. And there's been so many people have stories just like your uncle's about literally having to run out screaming to escape. And that violates the fundamental rule of all constitutional rights, that the right for you to swing your fist ends where my chin begins. And it no longer is worship and the right to worship God as you see fit when you are getting held against your will. Worshiping according to your conscience and your will is different than being held against your will. So anyway, enough on Scientology. This is freaking me out, dude. This is problem solved for politics.